Okay, good morning, बेटो. Now, in today's class, हम क्या करने वाले हैं? We are going to continue with our IAS Economics and IES preparation. And today we are going to go ahead and we are going to continue with chapter 8 of Indifference Curves, HL Ahuja. हाँ बेटा. अच्छा, अब ध्यान से समझो. We have already understood in the last class what are the assumptions of, what are the three main assumptions about consumer preferences. ये हमने 3 assumptions लिखी थी consumer preferences के बारे में. Completeness, transitivity and more is better. But I'm going to continue this. और आज हम start करेंगे सबसे पहले ये जानकर that what is an indifference curve. So indifference curve. Okay, let's start. What is an indifference curve? क्या होता है एक indifference curve? Very simply, an indifference curve is locus of all. Well, let me just tell you the definition. It is the locus of all those bundles which give you the same level of utility. So the locus of all bundles which provide consumer same level of utility. Form an indifference curve. It forms an indifference curve. Let me give you an example. But consider this. This is an indifference curve. This is good X. This is good Y. If I consider point A, B, C, ये सारे ही points consumer को same utility दे रहे हैं. They are giving consumer the same level of utility. So utility from point A is equal to utility from point B is equal to utility from point C. I can also say that consumer is indifferent between A, B, and C. So when we say that a consumer is indifferent between 3 bundles, it means that those bundles provide consumer with the same level of utility, and same level of utility माने they will be on the same indifference curve. अब ध्यान से समझो बेटा. If I compare bundle A with B, अगर मैं A को B से compare करूं, what will I find out? I will find out that the amount of good X has increased. Right? So, beta, we have already written more is better. So, when the amount of X will increase, it will mean that my utility will increase. Consumer's utility is increasing. Agar consumption बढ़ेगी तो utility बढ़ेगी. So, when I go from point A to B, the amount of X is increasing. So, consumer's utility is increasing. Now, bache, dekho here, see here that when I go from A to B, the amount of good Y is decreasing. The amount of good Y is decreasing. So, when good Y will decrease, जब मैं आपसे कुछ छीन लेती हूँ, when I take something from you, when I decrease your consumption, your utility will decrease. So when you go from point A to B, your utility is increasing because consumption of X is increasing. Your utility is decreasing because consumption of good Y is decreasing. So beta net, if I just go ahead and I see, your utility is unchanged from point A to B. एक increase कर रहा है, एक decrease कर रहा है, it's unchanged. But notice, what is happening, beta? You are increasing the amount of X. You are decreasing the amount of Y. such that your utility is unchanged. आपकी utility नहीं change हो रही है. This concept mathematically can be written through marginal rate of substitution, MRS. So we can write this as marginal rate of substitution. Marginal rate of substitution. But what is marginal rate of substitution? ये बोलता है this is the slope of indifference curve. Slope means perpendicular by base. That means it tells us change in good y upon change in good x. Right? So good y को क्या कर रहे हो? कम कर रहे हो ना? When you move from point A to B, you're decreasing good y. So decrease in good y. Just see here. This is perpendicular. So this is decrease in good y, increase in good x. So upon increase in good x. So how much good y are you decreasing? कितना good y आप दे रहे हो? How much good y are you decreasing? Good morning, everyone. How much good y are you decreasing to increase the consumption of good x? That is your MRS. Am I clear? And now there is another property which we need to remember, that we have diminishing MRS for well-defined preferences. We have diminishing MRS for well-defined preferences. हाँ बेटा, बच्चे, what is diminishing MRS? Now just see the concept here. Suppose I draw a well-defined indifference curve. This is my well-defined IC. And I am moving from point A to B to C. When I am moving from A to B, जब मैं A से B पे गई, I am giving up this much Y. मैंने इतना सारा Y दिया to consume an additional unit of X. Why? Because at point A, I have very less of good X. मेरे पास बहुत कम good X था. तो क्योंकि good X बहुत कम था, good X मेरे लिए बहुत ही valuable था. Right? So I wanted to give maximum good Y possible. मैं को जितना good Y हुआ मैं दे पाई to consume an additional unit of good X. Now slowly my good X is increasing. अब मेरे पास ठीक amount of good X है, ठीक ठाक X है. Good X is increasing. I don't want to give too much good Y. भाई मैं तो बोलूंगी ना, अब तो good X है ही मेरे पास, अब मैं बहुत सारा Y नहीं दे पाऊंगी X के लिए. So as good X increases, your willingness to give good Y for good X will decrease. आप बोलोगे जब मेरे को बहुत सारा good X दोगे ना, तब जाके मैं इतना सा good Y आपको दूंगी. So as you move along the indifference curve, शुरू में आपके पास good X बहुत कम है. You have very less good X. So you want to give more and more good Y for an additional unit of good X. So here you are giving more good Y for additional unit of good X. एक X के लिए आप बहुत सारा Y देने को ready हो. But here, once you have enough good X, then you want to give very less good Y for an additional unit of good X. क्योंकि आपके पास X बहुत है. अब आपको it's not that you have scarcity of good X with you. So the consumer is willing to give less of good Y for additional unit of good X. Am I making sense to you? So as you move along the indifference curve, you will be having diminishing MRS. Diminishing MRS means MRS was what? Amount of good Y given for extra amount of good X. So diminishing means what? You want to give less and less good Y for extra units of good x, right? Another important assumption which we have already seen is about monotonicity. I've already covered it above. More is better. And we've also talked about transitivity. So you need to remember these assumptions also. Now, having spoken about this, we want to always talk about the convexity of ICs. Convex ICs. But any well-defined, दो चीजें कर लेते हैं. Any well-defined indifference curve will have two properties. First, it will be downward sloping. Right. Second, it will be convex to origin. Because both properties are very different and you should not combine the two properties together. When I talk about downward sloping property, downward means that it is negatively sloped. ये तो हम मतलब डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग का मतलब तो ये भी डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग कर्व है और डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग तो ये भी डाउनवर्ड स्लोपिंग कर्व है. Both are downward sloping only, na? Downward. So downward sloping is only suggesting that if I want to increase consumption of good X, I must decrease consumption of good Y. X को बढ़ाने के लिए Y को गिराना है. That is what downward sloping is saying, right? But convexity is saying that you want to give less of good Y as X increases. So ये देखो यहाँ पे जरा have a comparison here. If I go ahead and I make two curves, both are downward sloping, then what is this curve saying? That as I go from A to B, जब मैं A से B पर गई, तो Y is decreasing and X is increasing. This is also saying the same. As I go from A to B, Y is decreasing and X is increasing. यही हो रहा है ना A से B पे. Both of them are saying Y is decreasing, X is increasing. But this says that you want to give less of Y as X increases. जैसे जैसे X बढ़ता जाएगा, आप कम Y देना चाहोगे. तो यहाँ पे आपने इतना सारा Y दे दिया, अब आप सिर्फ इतना Y देना चाहोगे, फिर आप इतना सा Y देना चाहोगे. You want to give less of Y for extra unit of good X. But बेटा यहाँ क्या हो रहा है? एक एक्स्ट्रा यूनिट एक्स के लिए मैं ज्यादा y देना चाहती हूँ. आई वॉन्ट टू गिव मोर एंड मोर ऑफ y फॉर एक्स्ट्रा यूनिट ऑफ गुड एक्स. वी डोंट वांट दिस फॉर वेल डिफाइंड प्रेफरेंस. सो फॉर कॉन्वेक्सिटी, ऐसा स्कूप बनने के लिए जैसे स्पून होता है, राइट? फॉर कॉन्वेक्स शेप वी रिक्वायर diminishing MRS. Right? For convexity, we require diminishing MRS. Question. How to check convexity mathematically? हम मैथ्स में कॉन्वेक्सिटी कैसे चेक करते हैं? वेल बेटा, ट्राई टू सी दैट whenever you have a curve, what will you do? You will go ahead, take any 2 points on the curve, join it by a line segment. आपने 2 points लिए, line से join किए. If this line lies above the curve, अगर ये कर्व के ऊपर lie करती है, then your curve is convex to origin. Right? Look here. I am taking a curve. I am taking 2 points on the curve. I take 2 points on the curve. I am joining it with a line segment. The line is lying below the curve, na? So when the line will lie below the curve, then we will say it is a concave curve. Clear, Vibhat? This is mathematically, part A. Actually, not mathematically also. This is graphically. So graphically, we can say that if you take any 2 points on the curve, you draw a line segment. The line segment is lying above the curve. वो line segment curve के ऊपर lie करता है. Then it is a convex curve. If the line segment is lying below the curve, it is a concave curve. Right, beta? Acha. Then part B of it, beta. Part B. Now we want to go ahead and we want to talk about mathematically. ध्यान से समझना. In order to see mathematically convexity, concavity, हम क्या कर सकते हैं? I have this curve with me. I will take 2 points on the curve. मैंने यहाँ पे point ले लिया x. Beta, whenever you will take x on the indifference curve, आपको यहाँ पे मिल जाएगा value जब आप function में export करते हो. So this is called f of x. You take the point y. Whenever you will put y in the function, you will get f of y. You go ahead and you take any weighted average. आपने इसका कोई भी एक average ले लिया, lambda x plus 1 minus lambda y. हाँ, थोड़ा सा maths जानना जरूरी है if you are an eco student. Then you take its average. आपने इन दोनों का कुछ average लिया और इस average को आपने यहाँ पर plot कर दिया. You just go ahead and say this is f of lambda x plus 1 minus lambda y. ये इसकी वैल्यू हो गई. And then what you can go ahead and do is you can just join this line segment. और इस line segment में ये जो point होगा बेटा, this will be the average of the function 1 minus lambda f of y. So convexity बोलता है कि जब मैं function का average लूं, when I take average of the values of these two, this value will come. It will be greater than taking the function value of this average. It can be a bit complicated, but you should know the mathematical analysis. So it says that lambda, देखो ध्यान से समझो, हाँ, lambda f of x plus 1 minus lambda f of y, it is ये जो इसकी एवरेज आई है, इस लाइन सेगमेंट का जो एवरेज पॉइंट आया है, it is going to be greater than इस पॉइंट का जो वैल्यूएशन आता है. It is going to be greater than equal to f of lambda x plus 1 minus lambda y. This is speaking mathematically convexity. अब क्वेश्चन अगेन आते हैं. If I give you any utility function, मैंने आपको कोई utility function पकड़ा दिया, how to check that it is convex? मुझे कैसे पता it is well defined, it is convex? So how to check in utility function that it is convex? मैं कैसे चेक करूं यूटिलिटी फंक्शन में that it is convex to the origin? What you will do? 2 steps. Step number 1, find MRS. ये first step है, find MRS. Step number 2, once you have found MRS, check whether MRS is diminishing or not. आपने MRS निकाला और ये देखा कि क्या MRS diminishing है या नहीं है, then that is basically checking whether it is convex or not. बेटा how will I do this? ध्यान से सुनना, बहुत बहुत important है. Mathematical analysis is always important. If you don't do it mathematically, you won't be able to score good marks in exam. So example, if I give you a utility function x square y square. Beta, what is step 1? Step 1 is find MRS. How do we find MRS? MRS can be written as MUX by MUY. You will differentiate this function with respect to x. You will go ahead and differentiate this function with respect to y. And then that will give you MRS. And beta. So if I will differentiate this function with respect to x, I will get 2xy square. If I will go ahead and differentiate this function with respect to y, partial differentiation is very important. ध्यान से सीखनी है. If I am differentiating this function with respect to y, so beta, I will hold x constant. So x square into 2y. When I will solve this, I will get the answer as y by x. ये हो गया step 1. Step 1 क्या था? Find MRS. I have found the MRS. But step 2 is check whether MRS is diminishing or not. So step 2, check whether MRS is diminishing or not. तो बेटा diminishing होने के लिए क्या चाहिए था MRS को? What is the thing we require? That as you will increase x, you will give less and less of y. जैसे जैसे x बढ़ता जाएगा, आपका MRS गिरता जाएगा. So in order to check diminishing MRS, mathematically, you will always differentiate with respect to x and it should come less than 0. अगर x से differentiate करने पर आपका answer less than 0 आता है, if it comes negative, you have diminishing MRS. एक और तरीका है समझने का. See that x is coming in the denominator. So as your x will increase, your MRS will decrease. जैसे जैसे x बढ़ेगा MRS गिर जाए. That is also another proof for it. So what can we say beta? Let's differentiate this with respect to x. तो x देखो y is a constant और 1 by x का differentiation होता है -1 by x square. So when I will differentiate this with respect to x, I will get -1 by x square. So the final answer will be -y by x square. There is a negative sign here. It is less than 0. If it is less than 0, it means that I have diminishing MRS. Diminishing MRS का मतलब हो गया convex to the origin. Am I clear? Try to understand this very well. So what are we saying? We are saying that if my indifference curve is convex to the origin, अगर indifference curve convex to the origin होगा, उसको mathematically check करने के लिए, to check that mathematically, I have to check whether my MRS is diminishing or not. Right? Okay, beta. Now, let us go ahead and take one more example and try to solve this question. So I'm giving you example number 2. Your utility function is x square plus y. Solve it yourself. Step 1. Find MRS. MRS क्या बेटा? MRS is MUX by MUY. What is MUX? MUX is marginal utility of good x. So you have to differentiate this function with respect to x. तो जब करोगे तो क्या आ जाएगा? 2x. Then differentiate this function with respect to y. You will get 1. So your MRS will be 2x. Step 2. Find whether MRS is diminishing or not. बेटा कैसे चेक कर सकते हैं MRS is diminishing or not? You will go ahead and differentiate MRS with respect to x. If it is diminishing, it will be negative. इसको differentiate करो with respect to x. What will you get? 2. 2 is positive. Therefore, it is not convex to origin. ये जो हमें यूटिलिटी फंक्शन दिया है, दिस इज नॉट अ वेल डिफाइंड यूटिलिटी फंक्शन. ये एक वेल डिफाइंड यूटिलिटी फंक्शन नहीं है, बिकॉज माई एमआरएस इज नॉन डिमिनिशिंग. वो डिमिनिशिंग एमआरएस नहीं है. Am I clear? So we have discussed about our MRS, about our well-defined utility function, and we have discussed two features of this utility function. The first feature we have discussed is downward sloping utility function. And the second feature we have discussed is convex to the origin. ये दोनों ही features we have discussed. We have discussed it graphically. We have discussed it mathematically. And we have also discussed it through a numerical example. Clear हो गई ये पूरी की पूरी बात अब? I hope this is absolutely clear to everyone. Now, बेटा, एक क्वेश्चन ये आ जाता है इंपॉर्टेंट, व्हाई राइटिंग एमआरएस एज MUX by MUY? क्यों इसको हम ऐसे लिख रहे हैं? व्हाट्स द रीजन बिहाइंड इट? सो वी वांट टू डिराइव द फॉर्मूला ऑफ एमआरएस. हमें एमआरएस का फॉर्मूला भी पता होना चाहिए. वी शुड बी एबल टू डिराइव दैट ऑल्सो, राइट? बहुत इजी है, एक बारी में हम we will be able to do it. Try to understand that I can go ahead and say that my utility